The air in the living room was thick with the kind of quiet that comes after a long day. Everyone was tired. The sun had just dipped below the rooftops, casting long shadows across the carpet. I sat on the edge of the couch watching her. She was on the other end, curled into the cushions, phone glowing in her hands. Her fingers moved fast, tapping, scrolling. I had watched her do this 1,000 times since she was small, first with crayons, then books, then friends, now this small bright screen that held whole worlds I could not enter. I don't know what made me reach out. Maybe it was habit, maybe it was the way the light caught the side of her face, reminding me of when she was 6 and would fall asleep on my shoulder after a long day at the park. Maybe it was just love, the kind that lives in your hands before it reaches your mind. My fingers brushed her shoulder lightly, just a touch, meant to say, I am here, I see you. She jerked away like I'd pressed a hot pan against her skin. Don't, she said, the word sharp enough to cut. I pulled my hand back slowly. My palm felt suddenly heavy. I looked at it like it belonged to someone else. She didn't look up from her phone, but her jaw tightened. I saw the muscle jump beneath her skin. She was holding something inside, something big and coiled and ready to spring. I tried again, softer this time. What is it? Nothing, she said, but nothing was never nothing. Not at 22, not when you carried your whole life in 2 suitcases and a backpack, not when you came home between one version of yourself and the next. I shifted closer. The couch dipped between us. I could smell her shampoo, coconut, and something sharper underneath, the scent of a day spent moving through the world away from me. I wanted to smooth the hair from her forehead like I had when she was small and feverish. I wanted to ask if she had eaten, if she was sleeping, if anyone was being kind to her, but the words stuck in my throat because I knew they would land wrong. They always did now. You don't have to fix everything, she said, still not looking at me. Her voice was flat, tired. I am not broken. I am not trying to fix you, I said, and even as I said it I knew it wasn't entirely true. I was always trying to fix something. The slouch in her shoulders, the worry in her eyes, the way she bit her lip when she was thinking too hard about a decision I could not make for her. Then stop touching me like I am made of glass. I let my hands rest in my lap. They felt useless, foreign. I watched her thumb swipe across the screen, illuminating her face in pulses of blue light. She was somewhere else, already gone from this room, from this house, from me, and yet she was right here, breathing the same air. I thought about all the times I'd reached for her without asking permission. The scraped knee at 7, the nightmare at 9, the heartbreak at 16. I had always been allowed to touch, to hold, to soothe. It was my right, my purpose, my joy, but somewhere along the way the rules had changed and no one had given me the new map. She finally looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, not from crying but from screen light and exhaustion and something deeper, something that looked like grief. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to pull her into me, to wrap my arms around her and absorb whatever pain lived inside her. That was my instinct, my oldest language, love as rescue, love as repair. But she was looking at me like I was the source of the pain itself. You think I don't see it, she said, her voice low but clear. You watch me like I might shatter any second, like every choice I make is one step away from disaster. You hover, you text, you call, you ask questions that are not really questions. They are little ropes you throw to pull me back toward you. That is not true, I said, but the words came out weak even to my own ears. Isn't it? She put the phone down, face up on the cushion between us, a small bright island separating us. She sat up straighter, her spine rigid like a rod. My whole life you have been my safety net, and I am grateful. I am, but I can't learn to walk the tightrope if I know you will always catch me. I opened my mouth to argue, to explain that a mother's love was not about control, it was about care, but the words would have been lies wrapped in pretty paper. She was right. I did hover, I did worry, I did reach for her shoulder without thinking first. She stood up suddenly. The movement was sharp, abrupt. She paced to the window and back, her hands clenched and unclenched at her sides. I saw the tremor in her fingers. She was fighting tears or anger or both. I need you to let me fall, she said, her voice breaking just a little. I need to make mistakes without you rushing in to clean them up. I need to be lonely sometimes. I need to figure things out on my own, even if I get it wrong, even if it hurts. I nodded slowly. My throat felt tight. I wanted to say I am afraid of what might happen when I am not there to catch you. I wanted to say the world is not kind to young women, especially not to ones who look like you, who think like you, who feel everything so deeply, but I kept silent because I knew those words were about my fear, not her strength. She stopped pacing directly in front of me, her eyes locked on mine. There was no softness there, only resolve, a terrible beautiful clarity I had not seen before. "Prove it," she said. "Prove what?" "Prove that you trust me, prove that you see me as a person, not just your child." I stayed seated, my hands stayed in my lap, I waited. She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing over me, close enough that I could see the faint freckle on her cheekbone, the one she got from too many summers at the lake with me, close enough that I could smell the day on her skin, the bus ride home, the coffee she drank too fast, the life she was building without me. Then she did it. Both hands flat against my chest, palms pressing hard into my sternum, she pushed. It was not a shove born of rage, it was deliberate, measured, a statement, not an explosion. My body rocked backward, I stumbled once, twice, my heel catching on the edge of the rug. I caught myself against the doorframe, wood pressing hard into my spine. The impact knocked the air from my lungs, not painfully but noticeably enough to leave me breathless. For a long moment we just stood there, she with her hands still outstretched, fingers trembling slightly, me braced against the doorframe, heart hammering, not from the push itself but from what it meant. She had not lost control, she had taken it. She had drawn a line, not with words but with motion. This is where I end and you begin, this is my space, my body, my life, do not cross without permission. I could have been angry, I could have said, you do not push your mother no matter how old you are. I could have pulled her into a hug to erase the moment, to reset the balance, to remind her who I was. But I did not. Because in that suspended second between the push and my next breath, I saw it clearly. I saw the terror behind her boldness, the fear that I would never truly let her go. The push was not rejection, it was a test, a desperate plea disguised as force. Will you finally let me be separate? So I stayed where I was against the doorframe. I let my breathing slow. I met her eyes and I nodded once, just once. "Okay," I said. The word hung in the air, simple, quiet, final. She dropped her hands, they fell to her sides, limp, suddenly empty, her shoulders slumped, not in defeat but in release, like she had been holding her breath for years and could finally exhale. She turned and walked out of the room, her footsteps were soft on the hardwood, she did not look back. I remained against the doorframe for a long time. The wood was cool through my shirt, the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. The sky deepened to indigo, stars began to prick through the velvet dark. I thought about the first time I held her, minutes after she was born, so small, her whole body fit along my forearm, her fingers had curled around mine with a grip surprisingly strong. Even then she was holding on, letting go, deciding for herself what to keep and what to release. I had spent 22 years believing love meant holding tight. But maybe love sometimes meant letting go. Maybe love meant standing firm when pushed away, not to resist but to show you would not break. Maybe love meant giving someone the space to become who they were meant to be, even if that person no longer needed you in the same way. I pushed myself away from the doorframe, my back ached faintly where the wood had pressed in. I walked to the couch and sat where she had been. The cushion still held the shape of her body, a ghost impression of her presence. I picked up her phone, it was still warm. I placed it gently on the table where she would find it later. Part 4. The shift. The change did not happen all at once, it came slowly, like dawn light creeping across a room, 1 inch at a time, until suddenly everything was visible in a new way. I woke up one morning and realized I had not checked my phone first thing. I had not calculated how many hours since she last texted. I had not imagined scenarios where she was hurt, lost, or in trouble. My mind simply opened to the day without her as its first thought. It felt strange at first, like a limb had gone numb, not painful, just absent. I made coffee, watched the steam rise from the mug, listened to birds outside the window. Ordinary moments that used to feel incomplete without her presence nearby, now they felt full in themselves, complete without needing to be shared. I began to notice other shifts, too small at first, then undeniable. When she did not answer my text for half a day, I no longer felt a spike of panic in my chest. Instead, I thought, she is busy living her life, and I went back to my book. When she came home late, smelling of someone else's cologne, I did not interrogate her about where she had been, who she was with, what time she planned to be back next time. I simply said, "I saved you some soup, it is in the fridge." She smiled, a real smile, not a defensive one, and said, "Thank you, Mom." Mom. She had not called me that in months, not since the push, not since the space, not since the watching. But there it was, soft and easy, like it had never left. I did not make a big deal of it, I just nodded and went back to washing dishes, but inside something warm unfolded like a flower turning toward sun. I started sleeping through the night. My dreams changed to no longer frantic searches through crowded streets calling her name into a void. Now I dreamed of quiet rooms, sunlight on wooden floors, her sitting across from me at a table, both of us reading our own books, comfortable in the silence between us. Waking from these dreams, I did not feel loss, I felt peace. One afternoon I found myself in a bookstore, running my fingers along spines of novels. She would love this one, I thought, about a collection of short stories. Then I caught myself. I did not need to buy it for her. I did not need to press it into her hands with a "you have to read this." I could simply enjoy the thought that she might like it someday if she found it on her own. The pleasure was in the imagining, not in the giving. This was new. My love was detaching from action. For 22 years love had meant doing, fixing, providing, protecting. Love was a verb, always moving, always reaching. Love was meals cooked, clothes washed, tears wiped, scraped, knees bandaged. Love lived in my hands, in my feet, in my constant motion toward her. Now love was becoming a noun. It was a presence, not a performance. It was the ground beneath her feet, not the hand pulling her forward. It was the room she could return to, not the rope tying her close. I sat on my porch one evening watching fireflies blink on and off in the gathering dark. I thought about how I used to chase those lights with her when she was small, cupping them gently in joined hands, then releasing them back to the night. She would gasp each time they flew free, a mixture of joy and loss in her small face. I had always been the one to open my hands first, to show her that letting go was part of the magic. Now she was teaching me the same lesson. The fireflies did not love the hands that held them, they loved the freedom to blink their own light in their own time. The hands were only temporary shelter, not a home. I was learning to be shelter, not home. Home was hers to build now. Another shift. The pride I felt in her was changing too. Before it had been pride in what I helped create, the good grades I cheered for, the skills I encouraged, the values I tried to instill. My pride had always contained a thread of ownership. Look what we made together. Now my pride was clean, pure, belonging only to her. When her father mentioned she had handled a difficult client at work with grace, I felt a swell of admiration, not because I taught her to be graceful, but because she discovered her own version of it without me. When I saw her carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs without complaint, I felt respect, not because I raised her to be strong, but because she chose strength in a moment I did not witness. My love was becoming witness, not architect. I no longer saw her through the lens of my influence. I saw her as she was, a person making choices, facing consequences, growing through both success and failure, all of it hers, all of it earned. This shift freed something in me too. I started painting again, something I had not done since she was born. Small watercolors of the garden, birds at the feeder, light through leaves, simple things done slowly without purpose beyond the doing itself. I joined a walking group, met women my age who talked about books, travel, grandchildren, dreams for their next chapter. None of them asked about my daughter, not because they did not care, but because they saw me as a person, not just a mother. I had forgotten what that felt like. To be me again, not just her mother. Not instead of her mother, but alongside it. The two identities did not have to compete, they could coexist like trees growing near each other, roots separate but sharing the same soil. One rainy Thursday she came home early, the sky bruised purple with storm clouds. She was quiet, sat at the kitchen table, wrapped her hands around a mug of tea. I was reading in the living room. I did not hover, I did not ask what was wrong, I simply existed in the same space, offering presence without pressure. After a long while she spoke. "I made a mistake at work today," she said, her voice flat but not broken. "A big one. Numbers got mixed up, a client got upset, my boss was not happy." I kept reading my book but slower, my attention divided between the page and her. "I waited," she continued. "I wanted to call you right after it happened. My finger was on your contact photo ready to press. I wanted you to tell me it would be okay to fix it for me, to make the bad feeling go away." She looked at me, then really looked, her eyes clear and steady. But I did not call. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes breathing until the panic passed. Then I went back inside, apologized to my boss, made a plan to correct the numbers, stayed late to finish it. I closed my book, gently placed it on the arm of the chair. "I am proud of you," I said. "Not because you fixed it," I added before she could misunderstand, "but because you sat with the hard feeling until you could face it yourself. That is courage." She nodded, a single slow nod, tears welling but not falling. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, a gesture so adult, so weary, so strong. I did not reach for her, I did not offer a hug, though every part of me wanted to. Instead I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured a second cup of tea, placed it in front of her. Our fingers brushed as she took it, a small contact, deliberate from her side, not mine. We sat together then, not mother and child, but two people who had known each other their whole lives, sharing silence that needed no fixing. Later that night I lay in bed thinking about the shift, not just in how I loved her but in how I understood love itself. Love was not a cage, no matter how softly built. Love was not a tether, no matter how gently held. Love was not ownership, not even the loving kind. Love was trust. Love was space. Love was believing someone could handle their own life even when it hurt, even when they stumbled, even when you could have prevented the stumble. The deepest love was not the love that protected from pain, it was the love that trusted someone to survive pain and grow from it. I had spent years believing my job was to soften the world for her, to pad its edges, to stand between her and difficulty. But that was not love, that was fear dressed in love's clothing. Real love said the world is hard and you are strong enough for it. Real love said fall if you must, I will not catch you, but I will believe in your ability to rise. Real love said your life is yours to live, not mine to manage. This was not coldness, it was the opposite. It was warmth that did not smother, light that did not blind, presence that did not crowd. I thought about all the mothers I knew who measured their worth by how needed they remained, who interpreted distance as rejection, who fought their children's independence like a personal failure. I had been one of them. But no longer. I had learned something radical, something simple, something true. Letting go was not losing. It was loving in a new language. The language of respect. The language of trust. The language of two whole people choosing connection rather than requiring it. I fell asleep that night not worrying about her, not imagining her safe in bed, but simply holding her in my heart like a quiet ember, warm but not burning, steady but not demanding. And for the first time in years I dreamed of myself. Not as a mother. Not as a protector. Not as a fixer. But as a woman walking alone on a beach at sunrise, the tide going out leaving smooth wet sand ahead of me, endless possibility under a wide open sky. I was not looking for anyone. I was not waiting for anyone. I was just walking. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The shift was complete. I loved her not less but differently. Not with hands but with heart. Not with control but with faith. Not as my child but as my daughter. And the difference between those two words was the difference between possession and partnership, the difference between a rope and an open door, the difference between fear and freedom. I had given her freedom. And in doing so I had found my own. Part 3: The Watching. I learned to watch from a distance, not like a spy but like a gardener standing back to let a plant grow toward its own sun. I did not follow, I did not stalk, I simply noticed the small openings. Life gave me windows into her world that did not require me to push my way inside. One afternoon I drove to the grocery store 3 blocks from her apartment building, a place I had no reason to visit except that my own kitchen was full. I parked down the street, engine off, windows down, just as a habit, not a plan. The late afternoon sun warmed the steering wheel beneath my palms. I told myself I would buy milk and leave. Then I saw her. She emerged from the building carrying a rolled mattress balanced awkwardly on her shoulder, the kind of thin foam pad college students buy when they cannot afford real furniture. Her face was set in concentration, jaw tight, arms straining with the weight. She maneuvered it down the front steps, one careful step at a time. The mattress wobbled, threatening to slip. She adjusted her grip, kept going. Halfway down the stairs it happened. The mattress twisted, caught on the railing. She lost her balance, stumbling sideways, arms flailing. For a terrible second I thought she would fall. The mattress would pin her to the concrete. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, my foot pressed against the floor mat as if I could break her fall from here. But she did not fall. She dropped to one knee, absorbing the impact, letting the mattress slide rather than fight it. She sat there for a moment, breathing, head bowed, not crying, not giving up, just gathering herself. A man walking his dog stopped on the sidewalk. He did not rush over, he simply asked, "Do you need a hand?" She looked up, nodded once. Together they wrestled the mattress into the trunk of her beat-up sedan, the man laughing as he wiped sweat from his brow. She handed him a water bottle from her bag. They stood talking for a minute, easy, casual, then he patted the trunk lid shut and walked on. She stood alone in the parking lot for a long moment, hands on her hips, looking at her car like it held answers. Then she got in and drove away. I sat in my car, unmoving, the grocery list crumpled in my pocket. I had not moved to help, I had not called out. I had watched her struggle and fall and recover, all without me, and something in my chest cracked open, not with pain but with awe. She did not need me, she never had, not in the way I thought she did. Another time her father came for dinner. He was the bridge between our worlds, careful never to take sides but always to carry news. He stirred his coffee 3 times before speaking. She got the job she wanted, the one with the corner office and the big title. I felt pride rise in my throat, warm and bright. But he continued. She cried in the bathroom, first hid in a stall until everyone left the building, sat on the floor with her head between her knees for 20 minutes. My pride faltered, worry rushed in. Why was she crying? What was wrong? Was the job not what she wanted? Was someone unkind to her? Her father watched my face. The worry must have shown plain as day. He reached across the table, touched my wrist lightly. She was not sad, he said. She was scared, and she let herself feel it. Then she washed her face, reapplied her lipstick, walked out of that building and went for a long walk by the river. She did not call anyone, not me, not you. She sat with the fear until it passed. I nodded, slowly stirring my own coffee. Long after the sugar dissolved, the image stayed with me. My daughter alone in a bathroom stall, facing a moment of terror without reaching for a lifeline. She had chosen to sit in the dark until her own light returned. I began to see her everywhere in borrowed moments. Through the window of a coffee shop she sat across from a young man, his hands resting on the table, palms up, open. She spoke animatedly, gesturing with both hands. He listened, not the performative listening of someone waiting to talk, but real listening, head tilted, eyes soft. When she finished, he reached across the table, covered her hand with his. She did not pull away. She turned her palm up and laced her fingers through his. They sat like that for a long time, two people choosing each other in a quiet public space. I drank my coffee outside on a bench, pretending to read a book. I stayed until they left, walking side by side, shoulders brushing at each step. Through a mutual friend I learned she missed a rent payment. The friend did not tell me out of concern, but in passing, oh, she figured it out last week, tight month, but she got creative, took extra shifts at the cafe down the street. I imagined her counting coins on her kitchen floor, staying up late calculating numbers on her phone screen. The shame, the fear, the determination. I wanted to transfer money anonymously, to slip an envelope under her door to make it easy. I did not. She figured it out. She took the extra shifts. She paid her rent, and in doing so she built something inside herself. I could never give her the knowledge that she could survive hard things on her own 2 feet. The hardest moment came on a Tuesday evening. I was walking the dog through the park, the same one where I had watched mothers with young children weeks earlier. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples. I saw her sitting on a bench near the pond alone, knees drawn to her chest, head resting on her arms. She was not crying, but her whole body sagged with a weight. I recognized the weight of disappointment, of plans gone wrong, of feeling not enough. My dog pulled toward her, tail wagging. He knew her smell, her energy. He wanted to go to her, comfort her. I tightened the leash, gently steering us away. Every instinct screamed to sit beside her, to wrap an arm around her shoulders, to say, "Tell me what is wrong, let me carry this with you." But I kept walking. I glanced back once. She was still there, small against the vast sky, the pond reflecting twilight behind her. I walked home slowly, the dog trotting ahead, impatient for his dinner, my heart aching with a love so fierce it felt like breaking. An hour later my phone buzzed, a text, not from her but from her father. "She called me just now, voice thick but steady. She said she sat by the pond until the stars came out, then she stood up, walked home, made tea and started again. Tomorrow is another day." She stood up. She walked home. She made tea. She started again. All without me. I began to understand something fundamental about love. It was not about preventing falls, it was about trusting someone to rise. It was not about clearing every obstacle, it was about believing they had the strength to climb what they encountered. It was not about being needed, it was about being available without demanding to be used. I watched her learn to cook burning toast 3 times before getting the timing right. I watched her learn to budget, crossing out items on grocery lists with a sigh. I watched her learn to mend a torn seam with clumsy stitches that held anyway. I watched her learn to say no to people who asked too much of her, voice shaking but firm. I watched her learn to say yes to joy, dancing alone in her kitchen to a song she loved, windows open, neighbors be damned. Each struggle, each triumph happened in rooms I did not enter, on streets I did not walk beside her, on nights I spent in my own quiet house wondering if she was warm enough, fed enough, loved enough. But she was. She was more than enough. She was becoming. And I was learning to love the becoming, not just the result, not just the happy ending, but the messy middle, the stumbles, the doubts, the quiet victories no one witnessed but her. One evening I saw her on her fire escape, the metal grate barely big enough for one person. She sat with her knees to her chest, wrapped in a blanket too thin for the chill air. She stared at the city lights spread below her, a tapestry of other people's lives, other struggles, other joys. She sat there for a long time, unmoving. Then she pulled her phone from her pocket, not to call anyone, not to text for rescue, but to take a picture of the view. She smiled at the screen, a small private smile. Then she stood stretched and went back inside. She had been lonely. She had been cold. She had been uncertain. And she had stayed with herself anyway. She had found beauty in the loneliness, warmth in her own resolve, certainty in her ability to endure. I never told her I saw her that night. I never mentioned any of the moments I witnessed from afar. They were not mine to claim, they were hers alone, earned in solitude. I held them in my heart, not as evidence of her needing me, but as proof of her not needing me, and loving her anyway was the purest thing I had ever done. The watching changed me, it softened the edges of my love, sanded down the desperate need to fix and replace it with something quieter, deeper, more enduring: respect. I respected her struggles. I respected her solutions. I respected her right to live a life I could not control. And in that respect I found a new kind of closeness, not the closeness of shared space, but the closeness of shared humanity, two people navigating this difficult, beautiful world in their own ways, trusting each other to find their own path home.